Are you in fashion? Did you see what she's wearing? Vuitton shoes. I'm Sonia Sly. My heels are killing me. But I was told I have a backstage pass.
You will need to get the right pass to get behind me, ma'am.
Look, I need to go.
Code red. We have a situation.
I'm taking you inside the fashion industry to discuss trends, the reality behind the glamour, and the highs and lows of a fast-paced industry that never stops.
My first article was published on the front page when I was 12. My parents never commented on it, ever. And then years later, my dad was like, yeah, that Barbie story you did when you were 12, we were really proud of you for that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know for years. 22-year-old Caitlan Mitchell is the epitome of what you'd expect to see in the fashion industry. She's strikingly tall, photogenic, and has had an incredible amount of experience across the industry. Along with her siblings, she also runs NZ Apparel, one of New Zealand's oldest fashion magazines. And you could say it's a role she was destined for. We're at ID Fashion Week, and you're no stranger to attending like fashion shows and... Nope.
You know, you've been in the industry since you were how old?
4. Yeah, my parents actually put me in a lot of TV commercials when I was younger, like Huggies commercials, because I grew up in a publishing house. Dad started the whole business from the ground up. I came in every day after school. I didn't do after school care. I came into work instead and I folded envelopes. Mum made it so every envelope we stuffed got 50 cents, but every envelope you screwed up, you had to give back 10 cents.
Oh, okay. So you really had to do a good job.
Yeah, so that really was a key factor in my work ethic. So my brother is now the accounts and subscriptions, and my sister and I write all 4 magazines, along with our 2 new staff writers as well. When you're working close with family, because family don't always get along, I mean, how do you deal with the tension, or can you just outright say, hey, that's, you know, cut that out, that's no good, that's not working? Or... We shut the door and we have a yell and then open the door. But it's great because we can just be extremely honest, and it works out strangely really well. Was there the expectation that you would move into the family business? And because I mean, you're basically running it now, right? Yeah. Your dad's retired, your mum's still got her hand in it. I've always wanted this since I was 4. So since coming in as a child, there was one point that my mum remembers. I don't remember it, but my mum specifically remembers it, and she said, you sat down next to the editor of Apparel. He just hated me, apparently, the editor, and he said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I'm going to have your job. And then years later I bumped into him and he was like, oh, so what are you doing now? And I was like, I have your job. So as a little kid, I've always wanted it growing up, and it's strange because my brother and my sister both didn't want anything to do with the magazines. Is it because you loved fashion? Or yeah, I was obsessed with fashion, and especially because I had such a huge background in modelling over 10 years to about 17 when I stopped. How tall are you? I'm 6'1". Right, okay. Yeah. And so what was it about modelling that you didn't like? I'm too tall. You have to be really honest with yourself if you want to be a model. You got to look at yourself and be like, can I be an international superstar? No. Do you want to be a photographer? Yes. So I swapped, and to be taken seriously as a photographer, I stopped modelling. I went off to Whitecliffe, studied fine arts, majoring in photography, and then I went back to the family business. And now I do all the photography for all of our magazines. So you've basically seen all the different sort of aspects of the industry, because Apparel magazine is a retail magazine. So Apparel goes out to all of the manufacturers, distributors, anyone involved in the fashion industry, not so much consumers. We're subscription only, so we have a targeted audience, and that audience has been built up over almost 50 years now. We're 48 years old now. And I can't wait to turn 50. That's pretty good as far as New Zealand magazines go. We're probably the oldest fashion magazine in New Zealand. 1969, my dad started the magazine. He borrowed $200 from his mum and started it in his garage. Yeah. What was the impetus that was driving that along? Nothing. He left the Navy and got home, and he was like, I'm going to start a magazine. And fashion was the first thing. I mean, what was happening in fashion at the time? Do you know? I'm not too sure. But like, if you look, you've got archival magazines. I've got all of the beautiful magazines from there, and I'm actually constantly writing in every issue of Apparel, like, if you have old magazines, please send them in. I will give you anything. I'm just trying to bind all of them into a nice book so that I get them all like for a nice library
You profile local designers
Yeah.
and retail, fashion retail businesses.
Yeah.
What did the magazine look like in the 1960s? What kind of articles?
It was a smaller magazine than we have now, but it was much thicker. So it was just slightly smaller than A4. It was quite thick because we only did one every year. And then after that, they became seasonal. And then after that, we became monthly. As the magazine gained traction, we just printed more and more and more of them. So now we're 32 pages every month. We do 11 issues a year, so we do December and January as the same issue because everyone shuts down over Christmas. And we're on a much bigger paper. And the reason for it being much bigger is because when I was younger, I was really into recycling. I still am. And when I first learned how magazines were cut, I realized how much paper we were wasting. So now we actually have the bigger size. We cut the paper once, so we actually have no scraps.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's my little behind the scenes of why it's a random size.
You know, as a young woman, because you're only like 21, 22?
22.
You're kind of dealing with all these retailers, and is it hard for it not to become like a personal addiction?
I find Instagram and social media a struggle because I've grown up with social media. I'm a millennial, so I want all these new things, and I don't want to pay for them. People like me want to buy cheap trends that last as long as a month, and then you're on to the next thing. And it's really hard to go back. Now,
You mean in terms of a perspective?
yeah,
or?
to rewire it, you know, so that you want to buy one really nice handmade jacket that was made in New Zealand and not made in China, and that lasts you a lifetime. 50 years ago, it was all about tailoring, and it was all about traditional techniques and stuff like that. And now it's more about, let's make it fast, let's make it cheap. I find it really hard to find long-term items, and I find it really hard to sell other people on the idea.
And consumers are changing though
Yeah.
now. How would you say that's kind of trickling through at your end?
I think it's quite hard because a lot of designers, especially New Zealand ones and overseas ones, it's a global problem. Everyone is making so many big collections with so many pieces in them, and then they can't sell them all, and then I think we should work on designers changing their ways and making more collections in the year, not less, but with fewer pieces. So some designers have 4 collections or 2 collections a year, and they're filled with 80 pieces maybe, or 50 pieces. Like, it's a lot. And consumers, because they want so many new things, they see it once and they go in the store 2 months later, oh, I saw that already. So I think if we had a slow drops with less items and shorter runs, so everything was more unique, it's a dream, but if we kept everything made in New Zealand, that would really be helpful too.
I mean, obviously, like with your siblings and yourself running the business now, and everything's kind of going digital.
Yeah.
So how are you keeping up with the digital age?
I find that, especially because we've got 4 magazines in other sectors, for example, supermarkets, so we have supermarket news. People who are in the break room, they want to read a physical copy quickly. Or, for example, our restaurant magazine, Restaurant and Cafe, chefs don't have time to waste looking through their phone and wasting their own personal data. For the business side of publishing, it's definitely not dying. We're getting more and more subscribers every year.
You do have stuff online though, don't you?
We have an online flip turn of the magazine that's available for free for all of our international readers. So I'm working really hard to go backdate all the way back to the 60s, but I've got at least the last 10 years up there.
Right. You're a fashion photographer. You shoot for the magazine at all the runway shows. How old were you when you went to your first New Zealand Fashion Week to shoot?
Actually, it was the same year I was modelling in it. My first Fashion Week where I was modelling, I got 13 out of 18 shows, and it was hectic. And it was the only Fashion Week I really did. The next year I didn't do it, I shot it. And so I was actually interning for Michael Ng, who's the official photographer of New Zealand Fashion Week. And he's an amazing teacher. And the next year I applied as apparel as a photographer. And it was great because from modelling I knew all of the photographers. In comparison to overseas photographer pits, they are ruthless in comparison to what the family vibe we have in the pit.
So what is that reality in the pit? Because it's interesting to watch when the model comes down the runway, and it's really, they're coming down there for the photographers, not really for the people on the audience.
It's funny because my first Fashion Week that I shot with Michael Ng, there was Brad next to me, and he's an Australian photographer. He's amazing. He saw the previews of my shots while I was halfway through a show. He ripped my camera off me and he said, give it here, and he fixed all the settings and he gave it back. And because I was taking terrible photos and they were all blurry, and then he just fixed all the settings and gave it back, and I was like, oh my God, really threw me back and really put me in my place, because I was in a prime position in the pit. It's so different to normal photography. It's almost like shooting sports because it's so fast. It's instant, and if you miss it, you've missed a whole outfit. And that's what I've learned from so many years now of shooting Fashion Week, is that if you don't have the outfit, you've missed half the show. Like, you have to get one shot of every outfit, and then I upload them onto Apparel online instantly. So I'm also one of the only photographers that has the Wi-Fi function in my camera, so all of the photos go to my phone. And so I can just high-res Instagram. More and more photographers are getting that now, but I remember one year I was the only person with it, and everyone was like, what is that?
Do you enjoy being in the photography pit? Because I mean, you also sit, you know.
It's extremely uncomfortable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So unless you have a pillow, a seat, or a suitcase to sit on, like one of the metal suitcases, then it's comfy. But otherwise, if you're on your knees for an hour shooting with a very heavy camera gear, it's not comfortable at all, but I think it's definitely worth it.
Now, we were talking about funny stories in the fashion industry, and I mean, what are some of the most memorable, unexpected experiences that you've had?
It was a great runway show, and I didn't know until halfway through that all of the underwear were, had a little something extra going on. And then I was photographing, so I had another employee from Apparel in the seat in the front row, and we've been collecting all of the goodie bags all week, and then 2 days into Fashion Week we dump all of the goodie bags onto the floor, and out comes this thong. Incontinent thong.
Let's rewind.
Incontinent thong.
Yep, incontinent underpants.
It's just hilarious. Like, we just all crack up laughing, and there's this one male employee who was like, I'll take these.
It's quite an unusual thing to be given in a goodie bag, isn't it? Like that everyone
Very
gets
strange.
a free pair of incontinent underpants.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular example, it's nice to get an example of their work and to see the craftsmanship and to see what materials they use, that it's actually what kind of quality they have. Being a retailer or a buyer in the audience, you would want that, and you'd be like, this is actually great, because it's like being given tampons in a goodie bag. There are some that are horrible, there are some that are amazing, and you get surprised by the most random stuff that you get in your bag, but it's there for a purpose, and it's there to be trialed and used or discarded.
I guess just lastly, what are some of the highlights of, being at Fashion Week shows?
It's definitely seeing new talent and emerging designers and meeting new people, and I'm really interested in who's behind the brand, not so much what's on the runway, but who's helping backstage and how do they do this production, what materials do they use. And it's great to just support everyone in the industry, and I really want to promote every designer in New Zealand, so get in touch, because I just want to help you out. I want to see you stocked in 10 stores, I want to see you stocked in 100 stores, I want to help you get there.
That was Caitlan Mitchell from NZ Apparel magazine. You've been listening to My Heels Are Killing Me. I'm Sonia Sly. To find out more or to listen again, head to our podcast page on the rnz.co.nz website.